Three, two, one. What is up, everybody? You are listening, you are watching to the Constant Elevation podcast. I am your host, Gabe Rock. Finally back home, returned for this week from a defeating down in Montgomery, Alabama. I've been on the road 3 out of the 4 weeks in August, and I'm tired of it already. It's cool being on the road, but after a while, I'm done. Luckily, I won't be a TDY going on leave for a while, and so at least not until the end of the month of September. It was ended on a good note of TDYs. All of them were really good. Went to Tennessee, Wyoming, and then Alabama. This Alabama trip is an annual cyber conference for our community, and so it was pretty cool reuniting with some old teammates and meeting some new ones. Definitely, it was a different feeling, and I kind of knew this going in. My last job for the last 2 years, those events ended up being very jam-packed for me because I had to meet with a lot of mission partners, both on the Air Force and from industry side, and just kind of, it was exhausting having to meet with everybody during the day and at night because the networking still continues at the evening times as well. And so luckily I had a little bit more downtime on this side. I also got to meet up with some former CrossFit teammates. So shout out to Bodie and Bethany for hosting me and having dinner with your crazy crew. And it was good just to catch up. And so, but yeah, definitely got some thoughts after coming back from there. As I was sitting in the conference, and I had to almost starting to have PTSD from my last job. Oh yeah, I remember all these subjects. We were still talking about reoptimize your great power competition and the importance of the cyber community, what we do for the Air Force. And so a lot of the themes ended up being familiar to me, and then also wasn't anything new. And that's not necessarily a good thing as far as the progress I think we need to be making isn't as fast enough. That's just my personal opinion. And so it's not without for trying. It's just trying to do things at scale that the Air Force needs to do. We have lots of pockets of really good of greatness going on, but trying to replicate that across an Air Force is an entirely different business. And it's a very, very challenging job. And it is still needed to be done. But I approached the conference from a different foxhole. And so I was coming at it from my AFTAC lens and how I could actually affect that formation, because that was really I was primarily thinking about when I was going down there. And so there were a couple themes that I took away from the engagements and some of the keynotes that I heard. And so some of the first one was it's kind of like the overarching theme. I heard it. I'm not sure if it was a General Hawk quote or General Hawk quoted this book. There is a book. It's titled. It's not the big who eat the small. It's the fast that eat the slow. I was like, oh, okay, whoa, hold on, I got to write that down. And it really spoke to, especially in our business and technology, speed is of the essence. And I do feel that as now that I'm in a position where I can hopefully affect positive change, I want to drive that change as quickly as I can. And that's not always going to be the easiest job to do. And a lot of the new themes that have been emerging for the last several years, at least, is generative AI. And so I was really paying attention to those breakout sessions. I'm actually attending a conference in October, Gartner IT Symposiums over in Orlando. So I'm looking forward to learning even more from the CIO, CEO, executive side as far as how to implement some of these emerging technologies and generative AI technologies to our mission in the Air Force. I do believe there is a place for it. And so some of the things I was thinking about is, well, AFTAC is, we're a very, very science and technology driven organization. And so one thing that I've noticed is very, very difficult to do in our organization is just introducing any kind of change. And so especially when it comes to technology, we have a lot of our surveillance technology is tried and true, and trying to, sometimes it's even tailor made. Sometimes it's only a one-of-one that only exists in AFTAC. And so some of those things need to be, and rightfully so, right? There's only, for our business in nuclear trinity monitoring, we actually need some very bespoke kind of technologies and solutions that only we would use. And luckily we have a deep bench to try and get after those things. However, trying to merge that with emerging technologies and finding that path to success has proven to be challenging, but I'm not going to stop, can't stop, won't stop. And so that idea of how do I actually try and introduce change like that? And I think part of it is going to be, I was going to say attacking, wrong word, is going to be getting after and influencing the masses, basically of just trying to change that mindset. So across our formations, we have some very, very first term airmen, and we've had some senior civilians who've been there since like dirt. And so trying to manage four generations in the workforce, in the workplace is challenging, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. So I believe the first things to do is just kind of getting people introduced to the idea and technology and finding those easy exposure points to do. We have platforms like Nipper GPT, and so you can use on your commercial side as far as when you do use Chat GPT for your own personal, just to get familiar with how this works. Not unlike, when the interwebs first coming along and you start learning how do I navigate this thing? How does electronic mail work? How can I actually search for information? Like, it's just a technology that you have to have more hands-on experience than otherwise, and not let like the fear of what you think, oh, this is going to replace my job. No, it's not. It's going to augment your job and make your job even faster. So a lot of that is just going to be empowering them with some early basic tools, some 100 level tools, and then it's giving them time to just kind of experiment with the technology. I've actually started for this season, Constant Elevation. I've been using a lot of Gen AI in the background to really help part of my production. It actually shrunk it a lot faster. And now that I know how to use it. So for instance, I use Adobe Premiere, and they do through AI does transcription processing of these videos. And so I used to spend a lot of time writing some very, very formal outlines of how I want to talk, stuff like that. Now I actually just kind of write a couple thoughts down, record my episode just like here. Then I go through Adobe Premiere. It transcripts the whole thing. Then I open up Chat GPT and I say, remove all the timestamps of this transcription, and then summarize this podcast episode into highlights. And then gives me a really good head start, like 70 to 80% of just that manual labor of having to write that down. I go through all the show notes, I make my edits. So it's going to be AI assisted help that I use. Then I go through there. I can also prompt it to do, based on the summary, write me a 1-line episode that starts with "in this episode," comma, and it writes down. That's exactly what you see in the description of each podcast episode. I've then been using it to help me write some social media posts and automate the posting of it actually works. My production has gotten, for the same amount of time, I want to say I've almost doubled the amount of work that I can get done. And so actually it's very, very good in my opinion, because I know I'm getting used to how becoming the prompt engineer. That's it's a weird, funny word that you try attempt has generated out of this, but it definitely is there's an art and science and a skill to how you want to use Chat GPT, for instance. So just getting kind of reps and sets on that. Once you have those beginning tools, I believe in order to try and affect change and make sure you're going to be moving fast, is actually find the small wins, find the pilot projects where you can leverage it to be like, oh, we actually can see how this is going to help. So for instance, I'm going to probably using our version of it, Nipper GPT, to help summarize some of our meetings. And so we can write a transcription, it can bump up all the things, what are the decision points, who's going to take action, just based recording of the conversation, assuming it's going to be at the appropriate classification level. Then it just ends up becoming a lot faster. The idea is we don't have to remember what people said or whatever it is. There's some formative artifacts that are output of this, and we just get to work quicker. That's the kind of stuff that I'm really, really excited to be hopefully introducing the right amount of change in my organization, is to just see that, hey, so we have some opportunities to get things done. If we do it in a somewhat organized manner, we minimize what are the administrivia that needs to be done. It's important, don't get me wrong, but we can make that happen really fast. We prioritize and format some of the conversations that we need to have. So that's what I've been finding. Moving it, this is my pilot project, but I'm actually moving it into affecting large change across the entire next FY25 for our organization. By trying to teach everybody, like, this is how we should have constructive conversations. This is how we can make decisions. Here's what's required in order to make sure we can make a quality informed decision as much as possible. We need to talk about risk operations. We need to talk about funding. We need to talk about timing. We need to talk about manpower. Do we have the right personnel? Do we need to train people? Do we need to hire people? All those factors need to be considered, and you need to say them all up front. If the decision was so easy, we wouldn't need a decision brief at all. You would just go do it because all the things are there. But very rarely when we're trying to do this level, even at a wing level or center level amount of change, we have to consider all these things and make an informed decision. And make sure that we're getting people to say, bring it to the public, bring it, or public as far as in front of your peers. If you disagree with this, you have to say it with your big boy and big girl voice and back it up. You can't just be like, cross your arms and be like, no, I'm just gonna not move on this. Like, what are you, fucking in the second grade? Like, we have to work together to make sure that we're actually making progress. And that's your responsibility. That's my responsibility when we're sitting at the adult table. The rest of the teammates are looking up to us. And if we can't get our shit together, we are the problem holding the organization back. Nobody else to blame but us. And I refuse to be part of that problem. So that's going to be my initial things as far as kind of doing my pilot project, is really setting the tone, setting the pace to start FY25 in a certain constructive manner. And then after that, just holding ourselves accountable. Like, hey, we need to make decisions here. We can go back to the boss for certain vectoring. We should be making decisions as decentralized as much as possible. He's already told me that, hey, so if the majority of staff is already agreeing to what we're going to do, it'd be really difficult for me to say no. Apart from he knows some planning factor we aren't aware of, or like maybe the money's not there or something that matter. But that's what he expects of us, and that's what we should expect of each other. To actually, if we want to move fast, if we don't want to be stuck in a slow, non-progressive organization, we need to be in our business. We have to be. In the profession of arms, we need to be at the cutting edge and making sure we're making making timely decisions as much as possible. And so we can't do that if we don't get out of our own way. So I'm going to do my part, at least, and not even just from the IT cyberspace. I'm going to try and do it from wearing the 4 hat, looking at it from a just organizational perspective. I'm obviously, I have a certain bias towards support group activities as being the commander of that support group, but I can put that aside when it comes to the correct conversations. Be like, I need to make this eyes wide open from the perspective of what's best for the organization. And I do believe I can make those informed professional decisions. So those are the kind of momentum things that I took away after I came home from DFID. I have a couple more industry engagements. I'll be doing some follow-on work. Still going to be focusing on, it's funny, a couple conversations turned into one of my previous episodes where like, we don't have a map. I need to understand the architecture before I can do anything. And so the power of a map in storytelling and leadership is still very, very strong. I'm going to be thinking about, like, if we don't have the right people in our formation, because there's chances are we may or may not have the right number or the right type of people in our formation. How do we get those people? Is it a training pipeline thing? Do we need to just find through either free or paid for resources in order to gain that knowledge? Or is it in the best interest to just outsource that and pay a contractor to come in and do that for us consistently and professionally? We need to go through those conversations. And I think the last one was, obviously there's different paths that we can talk about cloud transition. And so I'm going to be talking to some subject matter experts to figure out what is AFTAC's kind of potential way forward in going that. Doesn't mean everything needs to go to the cloud. It means what are the right things that need to go for our AFTAC campus, and based on all of where we have architecture and footprint, where does it make sense to leverage things in the cloud, and where does it make sense to keep it on-prem? And for those respective reasons, we can have constructive conversations. Not all or nothing. There's going to be some nuance. We need to find that now. We need to get these things done now, and I want to set the seeds and set the path forward for the next 2 years, because I believe the urgency of what we're doing as a unit. So very, very excited. Usually always wired up, fired up when I come back from these organizations. I get exhausted as shit. It was a very long day. Started really, really early yesterday. I drove to Atlanta and then flew back here to Florida. But I'm going to be enjoying this Labor Day weekend. I'm actually the one at home right now. I need to go to the grocery store and I need to go pick up some food for dinner so I can cook for the family tonight. Ben's not going to be home. He's working. So guess what we're having? Fish tacos. It's the best kind of food that we get to knock out both things that stupid idiot doesn't like. He doesn't like Mexican food and he doesn't like fish. We're having fish tacos. That's right. And maybe some margaritas. So team, thanks again for tuning in this week. Again, if you want to catch up to my previous content, please check out the YouTube content or your podcast platform, wherever you choose to listen. You can also visit constantelevation.co to see all of my previous content. And yeah, I'm going to continue to evolve that platform. You'll start to see some changes here and there, but all in the interest of presenting information and the best tools for you to rise to your potential. All right, team, take care of yourselves this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.